Thank you for joining me again in this next module. And we're going to have several lessons in this module about how to create a culture of blessing. And in the last lesson, we talked about one powerful key component of a culture of blessing, and that is just a weekly impartation of blessing to sons and daughters. For fathers and mothers to have dinner together with their sons and daughters and impart what God says about them. And I'll tell you the reason that that is so powerful is because in our normal culture, and many of us grew up in a Christian background, or we're part of a Christian church or Christian congregation of some sort, we don't have a normal format of blessing for our children like Jewish people do. In a Jewish family, it just happens every Shabbat, every Friday night. It's going to be a natural custom where you would have that time of blessing. But as Christians, many times we have no format like that where we meet together. So what happens is all children hear is usually correction. They just hear what's necessary from their parents, which is stop this, change that, don't touch that, turn that down, do your homework, come home earlier, all the things that are wrong. And there's no format where you ever hear the things that are right. So that's why it's so critical to have a regular time of blessing like we talked about in the last lesson, and hopefully you've already implemented that and you might have had an opportunity to practice it already. Well, in this lesson, we want to talk about why blessing is so powerful. Why is it such a powerful, powerful key? And really, when you look in the Bible from the very beginning, from Genesis all the way to maps at the back of your Bible, you find Hebrew parents laying hands on their children and speaking blessing over them, imparting a powerful spiritual impartation that changes something. I want to look right now at one family that we find in Genesis, Genesis chapter 27. And this is the story of a family. Isaac and Rebekah are the parents. Jacob and Esau are the kids. And these are two sons, and they are both in search of their father's blessing. They both want his blessing. Now the father has grown older, and in this Hebrew culture there was a special blessing that was imparted to the firstborn son. He would get a double portion of inheritance, so he got more money and more land than the other children, but he also had a responsibility that came with that. He was to financially take care of his brothers and sisters. But there was an impartation of blessing that came from that father to the firstborn. Now, Jacob and Esau were both sons. Esau was rightly the firstborn and should have received the blessing of the firstborn from his dad. But Jacob desperately wanted this impartation of blessing from his father, and so with the aid of his mother, Jacob tricked his father. He deceived him. He put on, his father was, in his older age, was quite blind. And so Jacob put on clothing that would remind him of Esau, remind his father of Esau and the smell of Esau. And he came and made out like he was Esau and actually managed to get his father to bless him. So Jacob received wrongly the blessing that should have been given to the firstborn Esau. Jacob was actually the secondborn. So what we see in this story is whatever this blessing is, it was so important to these sons that the one son, Jacob, was willing to lie, deceive, steal, cheat to get this thing from his father. And we're going to pick up the story in just a moment and read it. But what you've got to, I mean, when I first read that, I was asking the question, what is this thing they were after? I mean, normally we use the word blessing sort of lightly. I mean, even here in the United States where I live, when somebody sneezes, we just say, God bless you. But people use that word lightly, bless you, God bless you. What does it really mean? Is that what these sons were after? Jacob was willing to lie, steal, cheat, deceive to get his father to say, God bless you, Jacob, God bless you, my son. No. Obviously, it had to be something much more powerful than that. So let's read the story when Esau comes. So Esau was sent out by his father to hunt game, prepare a meal, and come back with the expectation of receiving the blessing. In the meanwhile, Jacob snuck in there, pretended that he was Esau, and received his father's blessing. So in Genesis 27, verse 30, let's read this. Now it came about, as soon as Isaac had finished blessing Jacob, and Jacob had hardly gone out from the presence of Isaac his father, that Esau his brother came in from his hunting. Then he also made savory food, brought it to his father, and said to his father, "Let my father arise and eat of his son's game, that you may bless me." Isaac, his father, said to him, "Who are you?" How would you like that response from your dad? "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm your son, your firstborn Esau." Then Isaac trembled violently and said, "Well, who is he then that hunted game and brought it to me, so that I ate of all of it before you came and blessed him? Yes, and he shall be blessed." When Esau heard the words of his father, he cried out with an exceedingly great and bitter cry, and he said to his father, "Bless me, even me, O my father." And he said, "Your brother came deceitfully and has taken away your blessing." Then Esau said, "Is he not rightly named Jacob? For he has supplanted me these 2 times. He took away my birthright, and behold, now he has taken away my blessing." Esau was heartbroken over not receiving this impartation of blessing from his father. And if we skip down to verse 41, it says, "So Esau bore a grudge against Jacob because of the blessing with which his father had blessed him. And Esau said to himself, 'The days of mourning for my father are near, and then I will kill my brother Jacob.'" Esau was so angry over not receiving this impartation of blessing from his dad, he wanted to kill his brother. Again, the question we're asking is, what is this blessing of the Father that is so powerful that one son is willing to lie, deceive, cheat, steal to get it? The other son is willing to kill because he didn't get it. What is this thing that's so powerful someone is willing to kill for it? It can't just be the words, "Bless you. God bless you, son. I bless you." No, it's not just words. So when I studied that word in Hebrew, I looked at the Hebrew word for blessing. It is the word baruch. Baruch. And here's what it literally means. It means to empower to prosper. So when you bless somebody, you empower them to prosper. As we said in an earlier lesson, when you bless your son, you empower him to prosper, which means to thrive, to do well, to exceed in all areas of life. And so what Jacob and Esau understood is this impartation that comes from my dad opens a door in the spirit and launches me into the fulfillment of my destiny and my purpose, the reason God put me on planet Earth. And if I receive that empowerment of blessing from my dad, it makes life easy to prosper. If I never receive that empowerment of blessing from my dad, I struggle and have a more difficult time. Now, if you look at these 2 sons, Jacob and Esau, throughout the course of their adult life, Jacob prospered, Esau never prospered. Jacob was a large tribe. He had lots of land, lots of cattle, lots of wealth. He conquered his enemies, had very little sickness, prospered in every area. Jacob was a prosperous tribe for many, many generations. And I believe much of that was due to the door that the father Isaac opened in the spirit when he imparted a spiritual impartation of blessing to Jacob. Now, on the other hand, Esau never did prosper. Esau was a small tribe. Esau never prospered. Esau never had much wealth. Esau never had many members. Esau was frequently overrun by enemies, dealt with a lot of sickness, never prospered in so many areas. And so we see just in those 2 sons, blessing, cursing. Blessing results in prosperity in every area of life from one generation to the next. Lack of blessing caused that person to struggle. Now, the good news is, you may be thinking, well, I never received blessing from my dad, from my mom, and now they've passed away, or maybe they're not believers, they're not going to do that. Here's the good news. Whatever you fail to receive from your parents, you can go to God directly and receive an impartation of blessing. We have many, many live weekend events that are designed on purpose. One of them is called Blessing Generations, designed on purpose for you to experience that impartation of blessing directly from God that perhaps you never did receive from your parents. So it doesn't mean that all is lost because your parents didn't bless you. But I'm telling you, impartation of blessing is very, very powerful. Now, what does blessing do? Here's what you need to understand. Blessing answers two key questions. Whether you realize it or not, every day of your life you ask two questions, and they're critical key questions. The first one is, who am I? That's a key identity question. That means, does my life mean anything on planet Earth? Am I valuable? Am I loved? Who am I? Who's this me that lives in here? See, I realize I run into many people who don't like the me that lives in there. They don't like themselves. Many people have told me I go to sleep at night and I'm hoping when I wake up a different me is going to be there. But no, when I wake up, it's still the same me. So the first question all of us ask is, who am I? The second question is, why am I here? Do I have a purpose? Do I have a destiny? Or am I just marking time, taking up food, air, and water on a planet for 80 or 90 years, and then I disappear? No, God had a purpose in wanting to answer both of those questions. So here's what blessing is. Blessing is God's mechanism of impartation of identity and destiny to the heart of every person on planet Earth. So ultimately, there's only two answers to those questions. Who am I and why am I here? God has an answer and Satan has an answer, and they are absolutely opposites. So if you ask the question, who am I and why am I here? What will Satan say? It goes something like this. You're nothing. You're nobody. Nobody loves you. Nobody cares about you. You're stupid. You're ugly. You'll never be loved. You'll never be valuable. You'll never amount to anything. If you were born a boy, the devil says, your parents didn't want a boy, they wanted a girl. You should have been a girl. If you were born a girl, the devil says, your parents wanted a boy. You're born the wrong gender. You'll never please your parents. Or the devil says, your parents didn't want a child at all. You're just the product of somebody's lust. They weren't planning for a child. They didn't want you. Nobody wants you. You mean nothing. You're of no value. And regarding destiny, you have no purpose. You have no destiny. And even if you did, you're so incompetent, so messed up, you'd screw it up anyway. That is the devil's message. Now, God's message is just the opposite. God's message is this. When you ask the question, who am I and why am I here? God's message is, I love you. I planned for you. I knew exactly who you'd be. I wasn't surprised when you came. God didn't take a look at you when you were conceived in your mother's womb and go, wow, what are we going to do with him or her? No. God knew. See, your mother only carried you for 9 months in her womb. God carried you for thousands of years in His Spirit. And at just the right time, God put you on planet Earth and released you to accomplish a unique destiny and purpose. So God's message is, I love you. I planned for you. I knew you'd be a boy. I knew you'd be a girl. You came at just the right time. Maybe your parents weren't planning for you, but I was, God says. And God says, you are uniquely qualified. Nobody has the experiences you have in their life. Nobody has the gifts that you have. Nobody has the talents that you have. Nobody will reach the ones you're going to reach. And you're beautiful. You're exactly who I want you to be. I love the color of your eyes, the color of your skin, the color of your hair. I knew how tall you would be. I knew everything about you, and you're just who I want you to be. And about destiny, God says you're absolutely uniquely qualified. You are qualified to do something that I designed for you from before the foundation of this earth that nobody else can do. And God says, I will walk with you every day of your life to help you fulfill what I've called you to do. That is God's message. Now, blessing is the impartation of God's message. Cursing is the impartation of Satan's message. These are opposites. Now, what I discovered, it was so important to God that you would receive His message, especially at the 7 critical times in life that we're going to talk about, that God put some very special agents on planet Earth to make sure that you would receive His message and not the devil's message, especially at times of vulnerability. And who are God's messengers? Who are God's agents designed to impart His message into your life? They're not called pastors. They're not called teachers. They're not called angels. They're called parents. That's the role of parents. So, for your children, Your role, if you do nothing else regarding your children, the one thing God designed you to do was to impart His message to the hearts of your children and to protect the seed of God's message in the hearts of your children. That's the primary role of parents, is to be God's agents to impart God's message. You're loved, you're valuable, you're unique, you have a purpose, you will accomplish your purpose. I love you, I'm proud of you. This is God's message that was meant to come through parents. And the word that describes that is blessing. So that's what blessing means. Why is blessing powerful? Because it empowers children to prosper. It opens a door in the Spirit. It answers two key questions. Who am I and why am I here from God's perspective? See, I meet so many people who struggle with feelings of worthlessness on into adult life. They struggle with feelings of, I don't know what I'm here for. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. One of the most popular books ever written was written by Rick Warren, The Purpose-Driven Life. Now, that's a wonderful book, but why is that so popular? I mean, I think the reason is because so many people have struggled with purpose. They don't know what they're here for. They don't know why they're feeling purposeless, which is why it's powerful to read a book on purpose. But, God never intended for us to walk through life, being 30, 40, 50 years old, still wondering, am I valuable? Am I loved? Am I here for a purpose? Am I supposed to do something? No. God wanted to have a powerful impartation from an early age. Yes, you're loved. Yes, you're valuable. Yes, you have a purpose. And have that to be settled in the heart. How does that come? Through an impartation of blessing from parents. That's why blessing is so key. That's why blessing is so powerful. That's why when we read Genesis 27, we find one son was willing to kill for this blessing. The other son was willing to lie, steal, deceive to get it. They understood the power of blessing. It's critical. Now, many years ago, John Trent and Gary Smalley wrote a book called The Blessing, way back in the 1980s. And they defined 5 key components of a blessing. The 5 things they talked about was, number 1, a meaningful touch. People are empowered when you touch them, just to touch a son, touch a daughter on the shoulder. The second is a spoken word of encouragement. The third is that your word would attach high value. The fourth is that you would depict a special future for your son or daughter. And the fifth is that your word is backed up with a genuine commitment to support them and help them to fulfill their destiny and their purpose. So we talked about a regular time of blessing with sons or daughters once a week. How would you do that? I would suggest that you would get eye level or below with your son or daughter. Blessing does not entail looking down from above. Blessing is something that comes eye level or lower. So there's a meaningful touch. Maybe touch your son or daughter on the shoulder. Speak a word of encouragement. You're going to use words. You're going to use eye contact. Eye contact is key. And use words that attach high value. Depict a special future. And back it up with a commitment. Son, there's nothing you can do that will cause me to not love you. Nothing you can do that will cause you not to be my son. I'll always love you. There may be times when I need to discipline you, but I'll never not be your father. I'll never not be your mother. I'll always love you. I'll always help you. I'll always be there for you. That is so powerful. That empowers a son to take some risks. That empowers a daughter to take some risks. Another thing that John Trent, I heard him speak at a conference, was this. He said, to bless is like to step forward toward somebody in relationship. To curse is to step back, to step away from them. Or to bless is to add something to someone's life. To curse is to subtract, to take something away from someone's life. And what I've found, this cry of Esau that we see in Genesis 27, that is age independent. Do you know that there are people that will fly halfway around the world to the bedside of a dying father or dying mother, hoping to hear those words from a father or mother, I love you, I'm proud of you, because for many people, they never heard those words in all their life. And those words are so powerful, so incredible, So people at any age are waiting to hear those words. I would say that many people carry way on into adult life the cry of Esau, which is, "Bless me, oh my Father, even me. Don't you have a kind word to say to me?" I'd love to hear, "Son, you turned out well. My daughter, you turned out well. I bless you. I'm proud of you." That's something that just never goes away, something that is human that God put on the inside. You know, one of the most incredible stories I think of that has to do with that was a man that received an impartation of blessing from his father on his 65th birthday. I have a friend, I'll call him Paul, and his dad's name was Lewis. But Paul, I got to know some years ago, and he heard this teaching, he understood this. Paul had a 21-year-old son. And, you know, the frustration with his 21-year-old son is that the son just couldn't make up his mind what he wanted to do. So what he was doing was sitting around in his parents' home just playing video games all day. And Paul would come and say to his son, "Son, you can't just sit at home. You either need to go enroll in university toward a career path, educate yourself, or you need to just go get a job, or you need to go to Bible school. But you can't just sit at home and do nothing, watch TV and play video games all day." And the son would say, "Yeah, I know," and do nothing. And they would have that same discussion about every 2 weeks. Paul heard this teaching and he realized, you know what? I have never blessed my son. I've never imparted blessing to him. And as a result of that, when I look in my son's eyes, I see a scared, indecisive 8-year-old little boy and not a confident 21-year-old man like I should be seeing at this point. And he realized, I've never released my son into adult identity. I've never blessed him as a man. He still thinks of himself as a little boy and perceives himself as a little boy, and he can't make a decision as an adult. So he decided, I'm going to have a blessing ceremony like Jewish people have a bar mitzvah. I'm going to have a ceremony like that for my son. So he actually spent about 6 weeks teaching his son what are the qualities of a man, what is responsibility, what is integrity, what is purity, how should a man treat a woman. What kind of things should a man spend his time doing on a daily basis? What is work? All these kinds of things. And then he had a ceremony. He invited all of his son's friends and youth pastor, people from the church, the congregation they went to, and had a powerful impartation. And my friend Paul said, you know, I laid my hands on my son, I looked him in the eyes, and I blessed him. And God had given me many things to prophetically speak into his life. I read the blessing, and he said, you know, it was powerful. My son wept, received my words, and he said, you know what? I could tell something was different. I could tell there was a spiritual shift in my son's life because 2 weeks after that, he enrolled in university, pursued a career path, was very clear on what God had called him to do, was decisive, and began moving forward in his life. And he said that blessing was the key that opened the door for him to launch into the next season of his life. He said, then my family received some very sad news. Paul said, what happened after that is my parents, who had been married nearly about 45 years, were getting a divorce. And he said my dad was 64 years old. He and my mom had been separated for 9 months. My mom said, I'm not returning. I've had enough. I want a divorce. I don't want to live with him anymore. And my friend Paul said, that was sad news for all of us. So he said, my brother and sister and I, we began seeking God. What could we do about that? And he said, I realized that strangest thought came to me. He said, you know, when I looked in my 64-year-old dad's eyes, I saw the same scared, indecisive, angry little boy that I saw in my 21-year-old son. I realized my dad has never been blessed. So what Paul did, he placed a phone call to his grandfather, who actually lived in another country. Grandfather was 87 years old. Paul said, Grandpa, you know, we haven't seen you for some time. In a couple months, we're going to celebrate my dad's 65th birthday. If I bought you an airline ticket, would you be willing to come and help us celebrate my dad's 65th birthday? But more than that, I've got a special request. Would you lay your hands on your son, my dad, look him in the eyes, and release your blessing to him? Release him into his manhood. Grandpa said, you want me to do what? I mean, my son is 65 years old. If he's not a man yet, he never will be. And Paul tried to explain to him. Grandpa really didn't understand it over the phone, but Grandpa said, well, if you're willing to buy an airline ticket, I would love to come and see my children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. So he did. And when the grandpa got there, then Paul was able to explain to him, you know, Grandpa, I think my dad he has the cry of Esau in his heart. He's been crying out for all of his adult life, bless me, even me, oh my Father. He doesn't know that's what he needs, but I know that's what he needs. And he explained this powerful experience he just had with his son, and the grandpa said, I don't know if I could do that. That would be embarrassing. You know, I mean, he knows I love him. He's my son. And Paul said, no, Grandpa, has there been a time in recent years when you've told him, I love you, I'm proud of you, I bless you, I release you into your destiny? And Grandpa said, no, but I mean, he knows that. He's my son. And Paul said, look, Grandpa, I know that you hold a key in your hand to my Father's destiny and future. And if you would use that key of blessing, you would release something in his life. And Grandpa finally said, okay, I'll try. So the day of the birthday finally came, 65th birthday of Paul's dad. And these two men sat in chairs, 87-year-old with a 65-year-old son looking at each other. And the grandpa began to speak. All he could do initially was cry. He began to weep. And he tried again to speak, and he wept again. And finally, the third time, he got some words out, and he said, son, he said, I just want you to know, I love you. I'm proud of you. You're a success in my sight. He said, son, do you remember when you were 15 years old? And something welled up in this 65-year-old man's heart that nobody expected, nobody anticipated, and it was like a dam burst. And from deep inside just came a deep cry, a deep wail. And he fell forward into his father's breast, and his father just wrapped his arms around him, and that son just wept and wept and wept and wept. What nobody in the family knew, because they had never revealed this, is when that son was 15 years old, he and his father had gotten in a huge argument. It turned into a physical fight. They had had a fist fight. They had said horrible things to each other. And in the end, that father actually literally kicked the son out of the house, said, get out of here, I hate you, never return. And of course the son said horrible things, I hate you, I hope you perish in hell forever. And that was his launch into his adult life, leaving his father's home on those terms, with having cursed each other and said horrible things, physically beat each other, and so he had left under those terms. Now, they had both come to know the Lord later in their adult life, and they had visited each other and been in each other's homes. But now, 50 years later, this son is 65 years old. Nobody has spoken of this. And the father has never spoken of this event for 50 years. Now he brings it up on this day. Do you remember when you were 15? Oh, yeah. That son remembered. Clear as a bell. He'd been carrying the pain, shame, anger, bitterness, worthlessness, that feeling like I'm nothing in my father's sight, because those are the words that his father prophesied over him when he was 15 years old. You're nothing. You'll never amount to anything. You're a rebel. You're evil. You'll never do anything. All these horrible things that he said, those all were prophetic words that came into the heart of that 15-year-old son and lodged in there. You're worthless. You mean nothing. You'll never amount to anything. You have no value. You'll never prosper. And tremendous anger and bitterness toward his father had been in his heart. Now, they had seen each other and had cordial relationship for years, but never spoken of this event. When that father said that, it was like it lanced a wound, and out came 50 years of bitterness and anger and hatred. All this stuff came pouring out, pouring out, pouring out. That man wept for probably 15 minutes and finally sat up. You know, his father's shirt had a big, place of goo, nose goo and eye tear, you know what I mean. And sat up and dried his face. And his dad grabbed him, this 87-year-old man. He said, son, I am so sorry. I was so wrong that day. I completely mishandled that. I got angry. I said things I didn't mean. And now 50 years has passed, and so many times I wanted to ask you to forgive me. And I didn't know how. I couldn't do it. But son, today, I just want to tell you, I was so wrong in all the things I said, the things I did that day. Could you ever find it in your heart to forgive me? The son said, Dad, I forgive you. And the son said, I was wrong too. I said horrible things. Dad, would you forgive me? And the father said, yes, I forgive you. And then he began to bless. He said, son, I'm so proud of you. You're a wonderful man. He said, you married a godly woman. He said, all three of your children love the Lord Jesus. They're all serving Him. They all married godly marriage partners. And all of your grandchildren, your children's children, are all serving the Lord. They all love Jesus. He said, I'm so proud of you. What greater legacy could a man ever ask for? Son, you're a delight to me. Son, you've done well in business. Son, your children, your grandchildren are all serving the Lord. I'm so proud of you. I love you. I bless you. And if I never said it before, this day I release you as a man of God that you are. And I bless you in your adult identity and your manhood. I bless you, son. I'm so proud of you. And I don't know what all he said, but many things like that. And the son just wept and wept and wept again, received that. My friend Paul told me this. He said, you know what? Something changed in the spirit over my dad that day. He said, I saw it in his countenance. Right after that impartation of blessing from my 87-year-old grandpa to my dad, he said, you know what? I looked at my dad's eyes for the first time in my life. I saw a 65-year-old confident, decisive man looking back at me instead of a scared, angry little boy. And he said something just totally shifted. He said, but here's the real miracle. Do you know that my dad's life would change so much? 2 weeks later, my mom moved back home, canceled the divorce, and said, I don't know what happened to him, but he's not the same man. This is the man I thought I married 45 years ago. But for the last 45 years, I've been trying to follow an angry little boy who doesn't know where he's going. And if you're the follower, how are you supposed to follow somebody who doesn't know what he's doing and doesn't know where he's going, that blames you for everything wrong all the time? And that's what I've been putting up with. But she said, now it's completely, I don't know what happened to him, but this is the man I thought I married. I don't want to divorce him. I love him. And their marriage was restored. Do you know they spent the next number of years later in life helping other married couples restore their marriages? Just an incredible, incredible story. What I'm telling you is that is the power of an impartation of blessing from a father. And that's what God wants for every one of our sons, every one of our daughters. Now, I'm just talking about the power of blessing of a father. The power of blessing of a mother is equally important. It happens at different times. God uses a mother at certain seasons in life of a son or daughter, and uses a father at other seasons. But this son had the cry of Esau in his heart. The reason I'm saying that, you may have sons or daughters right now that still have the cry of Esau in their heart. They're crying out, bless me, even me, oh my dad, or oh my mom. And so here is the key thing for that. Is there a time when you can have a powerful impartation of blessing to your son or your daughter? Maybe you have an older son or daughter that are already in their adult life. And pray and ask God, when would be a time to do that? The other thing is, you may be thinking to yourself, well, I never received an impartation of blessing like that from my dad or my mom. Here's what I want to encourage you to do. Please find one of our online weekend experiences or a physical weekend experience. Blessing Generations is probably the best one, or one of the Freedom seminars that you can go to, and you can receive, be brought into that experience of receiving an impartation of blessing from God like that. Let's just pray. Father, I thank you for every father, every mother. Father, would you speak to us? What do you want us to do? What's the next practical action step you want us to take to plan a time of blessing for a son or daughter? And Father, I pray, if we are still struggling with the cry of Esau in our own hearts, God, would you make a provision, and even this day, would you pour out your blessing upon us, Lord, that we might hear those words from you. In the mighty name of Yeshua, Jesus, Messiah. Amen.